Well, welcome back to Whole Bible Study. I'm your host, Tad Inoue. In the book of Leviticus, holiness isn't a vague or abstract ideal. It's something structured, woven into time, space, ritual, and even to the body. Over the past few chapters, we've been immersed in the sacred, the consecration of priests, the dramatic unveiling of the tabernacle, and the harrowing misstep of unauthorized fire entering the divine presence. These were moments soaked in incense and awe, shaped by ritual gravity. But here in Leviticus 11, we shift scenes. We step out of the smoke of the altar and into the ordinary. And yet, even in the everyday, holiness remains the central concern. This chapter marks the beginning of a broader section often referred to as the Holiness Code. It's a collection of laws and rituals that bring God's presence into the rhythms of daily life, into what Israel eats, touches, avoids, and honors. For modern readers, it may appear like a list of strange dietary restrictions, maybe even a primitive health manual. But Leviticus 11 is doing something much deeper. It's crafting a vision for how an entire community can order its life in response to the nearness of the holy God. Let's begin with the text itself for the live reading. All right. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "Say to the Israelites, of all the animals that live on the land, these are the ones you may eat. You may eat of any of the animals, any animal that has a split hoof completely divided and that chews the cud. There are some that only chew the cud or only have split hoof, but you must not eat them. The camel, though it chews the cud, does not have a split hoof. It is ceremonially unclean for you. The cunny, though it chews the cud, does not have a split hoof. It is unclean for you. The rabbit, though it chews the cud, does not have a split hoof. It is unclean for you. And the pig, though it has a split hoof, completely divided, but does not chew the cud, it is unclean for you. You must not eat their meat or touch their carcasses. They are unclean for you. Of all the creatures living in the water of the seas and the streams, you may eat of any of these that have fins and scales, but all the creatures in the seas or streams that do not have fins and scales, whether among all of the swarming things or among all other living creatures in the water, you are to detest. And since you are to detest them, you must not eat their meat, and you must detest their carcasses. Anything living in the water that does not have fins and scales is to be detestable to you. These are the birds that you are to detest, not to eat, because they are detestable: the eagle, the vulture, the black vulture, the red kite, any kind of black kite, any kind of raven, the horned owl, the screech owl, the gull, any kind of hawk, the little owl, the cormorant, the great owl, the white owl, the desert owl, the osprey, the stork, any kind of heron, the hoopoe, and the bat. All flying insects that walk on all fours are to be detestable to you. They are, however, some winged creatures that walk on all fours that you may eat. Those have joined legs for hopping on the ground. Of these you may eat any kind of locust, katydid, cricket, or grasshopper. But all other winged creatures that have 4 legs you are to detest. You will make yourselves unclean by these. Whoever touches their carcasses will be unclean till evening. Whoever picks up one of their carcasses must wash his clothes, and he will be unclean till evening. Every animal that has a split hoof is not completely divided. Every animal that has a split hoof, not completely divided, or that does not chew the cud, is unclean for you. Whoever touches the carcass of any of these will be unclean. Of all the animals that walk on all fours, those that walk on their paws are unclean for you. Whoever touches their carcasses will be unclean till evening. Anyone who picks up their carcasses must wash his clothes, and he will be unclean till evening. They are unclean to you. Of all the animals of the animals that move about on the ground, these are unclean for you: the weasel, the rat, any kind of great lizard, the gecko, the monitor lizard, the wall lizard, the skink, and the chameleon. All of those that move along the ground, these are unclean for you. Whoever touches them when they are dead will be unclean till evening. When one of them dies and falls into something, that article, whatever it is, will be unclean, whether it is made of wood, cloth, hide, or sackcloth. Put it in water, it will be unclean until evening, and then it will be clean. If one of them falls into a clay pot, everything in it will be unclean, and you must break the pot. Any food that could be eaten, but has water on it from such a pot is unclean, and any liquid that could be drunk from it is unclean. Anything that one of their carcasses falls on becomes unclean. And an oven or cooking pot must be broken up. They are unclean, and you are to regard them as unclean. A spring, however, or a cistern for collecting water remains clean, but anyone who touches one of these carcasses is unclean. If a carcass falls on the seeds, or any seeds that are to be planted there, they remain clean. But if water has been put on the seed and a carcass falls on it, it is unclean for you. If the animal that you are allowed to eat dies, anyone who touches the carcass will be unclean till evening. Anyone who eats some of the carcass must wash his clothes, and he must be unclean till evening. Anyone who picks up the carcass must wash his clothes, and he will be unclean until evening. Every creature that moves on the ground is detestable. It is not to be eaten. You are not to eat any creature that moves around on the ground, whether it moves on its belly or walks on all fours, or on many feet. It is detestable. Do not defile yourselves of any of these creatures. Do not make yourselves unclean by means of them, or be unclean by them. I am the Lord your God. Consecrate yourselves and be holy, because I am holy. Do not make yourselves unclean by any creature that moves about on the ground. I am the Lord who brought you up out of Egypt to be your God. Therefore be holy, because I am holy. These are the regulations concerning animals, birds, every living thing that moves in the water, and every creature that moves about on the ground. You must distinguish between the unclean and the clean, between the living creatures that may be eaten and those that may not be eaten. Right. Well, Leviticus 11 opens with God speaking not just to Moses, but to both Moses and Aaron. That small detail signals a shift. What follows isn't limited to priestly instruction. It's guidance for the whole people. And while the content that unfolds may look like dietary regulation, it really is about covenantal formation. It's not just about what food is allowed, it's about shaping Israel's identity as people set apart. This chapter teaches Israel how to carry holiness out of the sanctuary and into the kitchen, the field, and the home. The first category it addresses is land animals. To be considered clean, fit for consumption, an animal must display two characteristics. It must chew the cud, and it must have completely split hoof. In Hebrew, these traits are referred to as ma'aleh-gerah, meaning that brings up the cud, and mafreset parsa, meaning divides the hoof. Animals that meet both criteria, like cattle, sheep, and goats, are permitted. But if an animal meets only one, say the camel, which chews the cud but lacks the proper feet, it's considered unclean, or tame. The same distinction applies to pigs, which have split hooves but don't chew the cud, and to the hyrax, a small desert creature that doesn't meet either requirement. This isn't about hygiene or biological taxonomy. The logic here is symbolic. In Leviticus, animals are seen as clean when they fully embody the characteristics of their domain. They are whole within their created category. Animals that blend or blur distinctions, chewing but without the right feet, or walking without right feet, but eating differently, don't fit the pattern. And fitting the pattern is everything. As anthropologist Mary Douglas famously noted, these laws are from a symbolic system. Clean animals conform to expectations. They fit the mold. They affirm the structure of creation. Unclean animals deviate. They unsettle the order. So the laws aren't arbitrary. They train the imagination. They teach Israel to notice patterns, to live with discernment, and to value coherence in creation. In that way, the food laws aren't just rules. They're daily liturgies. They form a habit of attentiveness. The text then moves to aquatic creatures. Similar to land animals, the criteria are precise. To be clean, a creature that lives in the water must have both sanapier fins and cassette scales. Fish like trout or carp meet these criteria, but animals like shellfish, eels, rays, and catfish fall short and are thus considered unclean. Again, the focus isn't health risk, it's classification. Clean animals reflect clarity and consistency in form. Holiness is expressed through that kind of clarity. When the chapter turns to birds, the structure changes. Rather than listing traits of clean birds, the text offers a list of prohibited ones: the vulture, the kite, the raven, the owl, and others. Most of these birds are scavengers or predators, creatures associated with blood, death, or disorder. They're called shekets, a term often translated detestable. But that word can be misleading. It doesn't carry the moral charge that we might think. It's a ritual term. These birds aren't evil. They're simply not fit for sacred life. They live on the border between life and death, and as such, they don't belong at the table of a holy people. Insects come next. Most are forbidden, but there's an exception. For those that leap, specifically those that with joined legs above their feet. The text names 4. Abor, locust, salam, possibly referring to a bald locust, or hargol, carol, likely a cricket, kargav, or a grasshopper. These weren't fringe foods. In the ancient Near East, locusts were a common and important protein source. Their inclusion in the clean category suggests that ritual and practicality were not at odds. Even in conditions of scarcity, form still mattered. These insects move in ways that sets them apart. Their leaping becomes a sign of their fitness. From eating, the text turns to touching. Contact with carcasses of an unclean animal renders a person tame, ritually impure. But this impurity is not permanent. It lasts ad har erev, until evening. The person must wash, wait, and then can return to normal life. This introduces a vital concept in Levitical theology. Impurity is not sin. It's a temporary state. It doesn't require atonement. It requires awareness and management. Impurity isn't a moral failure. It's a disruption of sacred order, something that calls for attention, not shame. The laws then go deeper into the home. If the carcass of an unclean animal falls into earthenware vessel, a keres, the vessel must be broken. Clay is porous. It absorbs what touches it. In ritual terms, it can't be fully cleansed. It loses its capability to hold sanctity, and so it must be discarded. In contrast, metal vessels can be scoured and reused. The difference between materials matters. Each responds to contamination in its own way. The law recognizes this and treats it liturgically. The Ordinary things of the home are folded into sacred system. Water, too, is addressed. A sealed container of water can become impure when touched by uncleanness. But a flowing spring or cistern called a machim or kachim, living water, remains pure. Movement preserves purity. This concept becomes important later in Scripture. Living water becomes a symbol for divine vitality, spiritual resilience, and renewal. That flow remains clean. What is stagnant is vulnerable. All of this might feel distant from modern life, but what Leviticus teaches or gives us is more than rules. It's a way of seeing, a way of living where holiness saturates even the mundane. The food you eat, the items of your kitchen, the water in your vessel, all of it becomes part of the sacred rhythm. These boundaries train awareness. They teach people not just to make moral decisions, but to live with a sacred mindfulness. Now, the chapter closes with theological refrain, "Be holy, for I am holy." This is the heartbeat of the book. Israel is called to reflect the character of God, not just in temple rituals, but in ordinary life. The law grounds that call in memory. Quote, "I am the Lord who brought you up from Egypt." In other words, liberation is not the end goal. It's the beginning of transformation. The God who rescues also reforms. Redemption leads to rhythm. The vision of Leviticus 11 continues into later texts. In the Greek Septuagint, the Hebrew terms tahor and tame become kathros and akathrotos. And sekets becomes budeligma. These terms echo, those are Hebrew to Greek. These terms echo into New Testament. In Mark 7, Jesus debates not Torah, but the Pharisaic traditions around hand washing. There's a debated gloss that reads, quote, "Thus he declared all foods unclean," unquote. But in the context, Jesus is targeting human additions, not God's law. He challenges the traditions that masks deeper neglect of justice, not the idea of ritual purity itself. In Acts 10, Peter receives a vision of sheet filled with unclean animals. It's often read as an abolition of dietary laws, but Peter himself interprets the vision symbolically. Quote, "God has shown me that I should not call any person common or unclean," unquote. The vision is about Gentile inclusion, not food. Early followers of Jesus continued to observe food laws, especially among Jewish communities. Gentile believers were not required to take on the full yoke of Torah, not because the law was absolute, but because the covenant was being extended. Scholars like Elaine Pagels emphasize how diverse early Christians was. John Dominic Crossan highlights Jesus' open table as a radical act of hospitality, and James D. Tabor and Ross Nichols remind us that Torah remained central to these earliest Jesus communities. Kashrut, dietary law, wasn't about legalism. It was about living attentively, about embodying covenant in daily habits. Archaeology confirms that food shaped identity. In Israelite highland settlements, pig bones are rare. In Philistine cities, they're common. What you ate defines who you are. Refusing certain foods wasn't just about ritual, it was a way to resist assimilation, to maintain cultural and theological boundaries. So why these laws? Scholars offer several interpretations. Some suggest health, certain meats spoil quickly or carry parasites, but Leviticus never mentions disease. Others point to economic or ecological logic. Israel was a herding culture, not a seafaring one. Still others follow Douglas, emphasize symbolic order. Animals are clean when they fit their type. And some see boundary making at the core, ways of distinguishing Israel from its neighbors. Likely all of these are partly true, but taken together they reveal something much deeper. Leviticus 11 is priestly pedagogy. It teaches how to arrange life in response to a holy God. It's about identity shaped through attention. Even food becomes covenantal. Even touching becomes theological. And then there are the creeping things, the sheratzim. These aren't just bugs. They symbolize the edge of order. They crawl in the shadows, defy categories, and remind Israel of the fragility of structure. Scholar Lawrence Struckenbruck has shown how ancient Jewish texts often treat mixed or ambiguous creatures as signs of cosmic disruption. Leviticus responds not with fear, but with clarity. It pushes back against the disorder with rhythm, ritual, and sacred awareness. So whether or not we observe these specific laws today, the message still speaks. Daily life matters to God. The things we eat, the objects we handle, the ways we arrange our homes, these shape who we are becoming. Leviticus 11 isn't an irrelevant list of obsolete rules. It's a call to live attentively, to embody holiness, and to remember that the sacred doesn't stay behind in sanctity. It follows us home. Thank you for studying with me today. May the God who brings order out of chaos bless your table with peace, your home with wisdom, and your community with generous love. If this has been meaningful to you, feel free to leave a note or to share it with someone who you care about. But no matter what, bless you all and keep your hearts open and your minds free. And we'll see you in the next chapter tomorrow.